Okay, so moving on in today's agenda, I have the great honor to introduce next speakers. It's our dear partners from PTC, represented by Mark Lobo and Brian Thompson. A warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. You guys, yep, we can hear us. That's a little treacherous now since it's been adjusted. So thanks for having us today. We're going to do a quick intro, and I promise this will be very, very dynamic between Mark and I. We're so in sync as leaders of CAD and PLM at PTC that we dressed almost exactly the same today by accident. Gray pants, blue blazer, blue shoes.
Not by accident.
No, yeah?
Not by accident.
Okay, anyway. So thanks, everybody. Brian Thompson. I'm the general manager of the CAD business at PTC. Been at PTC 15 years. Spent the first 15 years or so of my career actually in industry doing what most of all of you do as an engineer, using Pro Engineer back in the day. Grew up as a product manager at PTC, and I've been leading the CAD business at PTC now for 8.5 years. Mark?
So thanks again, and actually really excited and fired up to be here. My name is Mark Lobo. I'm Brian's digital engineering brother.
Yes.
And GM of our Windchill PLM business. I've been at PTC for 23 years. A lot of background, mechanical engineer by academics. Started with Pro Engineer, really back in the day.
We all did,
product
didn't we?
manager.
In this room,
yeah.
we all did. It's okay.
Intralink, Windchill in the early days, but grew up through product management and been leading the Windchill business for the last 2.5 years. So you're going to take the first steps, and
Yep.
I'm going to sit back there and
Okay.
watch time.
So what we decided to do here, instead of having 20 minutes of Brian talking and 20 minutes of Mark talking, we're going to share all of these topics together. And I think it's a good way to go because, frankly, the CAD and PLM teams at PTC work together very, very closely. The products are qualified together, products are tested together, as you might imagine, and so we also develop strategies together, and I think our commentary on the topics we have today together makes sense to do it together. But I am going to start with just reminding you about who PTC is very, very quickly, only from the point of view that PTC is a strong player in the market. We're growing in the mid-teens. We're profitable on the order of, say, 35 to 45% operating margin. And if you just take those two numbers and go look at software companies in the world, it is a very, very small group. We're a very, very strong company. And all that means is that we as a company can continue to invest in our core products at an accelerated rate. As we sit here today, both my team and Mark's team are larger today than they were a year ago, because the company is continuing to invest in the products. We're continuing to add capacity to our ability to deliver products to all of you. So strong company, strong partner ecosystem. By the way, I should mention that there is no discussion about our partner ecosystem at PTC without discussing PDS Vision. They're that important to us. It's a very small group of very large partners that occupy, I would say, a disproportionate amount of our attention. And PDS is at the top of the list. We're happy to have it. So it's an important part of the way we go to market, and an important part of the numbers that you see on the screen. So just to step back and take a look at what we see happening in the market, and we're actually going to talk about what our response is to a lot of these broader macro forces that are driving what's happening in the market today. Between Mark and I, we'll talk about all of these, but I think you heard some of this in the Vestas presentation. There's things happening with supply chains, things happening with environmental. Obviously, their whole business is around environmental sustainability. Nobody comes to visit PTC without a topic around environmental sustainability. There wasn't a lot of talk about software, but we see software being more and more important in the value that products are delivering to customers. There's a lot of elements of service in what Vestas is doing. You didn't hear a lot about that, but a lot of our customers are talking more and more about how to drive value from service. There are many of our customers build products that the amount of revenue they get from selling the product is dwarfed by the amount of revenue that's available to them throughout the entire life of the product. And so maintaining the digital thread all the way out through the service part of the organization is a key thing that we've started to focus more on in the last few years for reasons I'll explain in a minute. And it's a lot on the mind of our customers as well. I don't want to skip over things like supply chain and workforce changes. We see this a lot. We were actually talking about this at dinner last night about how young engineers coming into the workforce think a lot differently, adopt technologies a lot more differently than engineers like myself that have a lot of gray hair, that the way we think. So that's changing how we think about products. That's changing how our customers are thinking about evolving what they do in design and development. And then last but not least, I know I could have jumped across the slide, but the way the supply chain dynamics have changed, especially since COVID, is very, very interesting. We see a lot of customers focused on being a lot more flexible in the way they want to be able to source products, and that puts a lot of pressure, I would say, mostly on my PLM brother here, maybe a little bit less so on how customers deploy CAD, but nonetheless, it's something that our customers are worried about. So I had to include this slide because I love the way it builds. I'm going to actually put products on this slide, but I did want to make an important point about closing the loop on the digital thread. I think we've talked a lot about digital thread in PTC's history. We've used different terms for it, but one of the things that's been missing that we've added, I would say, in the last 10 years is this connective tissue back to the product through IoT. But the other element that we were also missing, and I'll go to the next slide here, the other element we were also missing is, well, okay, great, you can stay connected to the product. You heard a little bit about IoT connectivity even in the Vestas presentation, but what happens when you now have to go take an action on that product in the field? How do you keep the provenance of that product, the status of that product up to date over time? You need a bona fide, scalable SLM, a service type of offering. And finally, with the acquisition of ServiceMax, we can stand in front of you and really credibly say that from the first authoring of requirements through design, through management of the product's configurations between Creo and Windchill, all the way out into service and then back into the enterprise, we really can close the digital thread with offerings that are entirely from PTC and with, of course, help in adopting those technologies with partners like PTS. So it's a very, very exciting time to be at PTC, to have the kind of breadth that we have under our control as a product portfolio. It's been a long journey to get to a point where we can stand in front of you and tell you a story like this. We're very excited to be able to deliver it to you. And I think it's opening up the conversations we're having with a lot of customers. They're the core of PTC, and most of PTC's revenue is still sitting here between me and Mark, but the opportunities for all of us to gain value from what you do in the core are growing over time with our ability to connect and service and manage the product truly through its entire life cycle to the point where it's decommissioned, right? So very, very excited to be able to deliver on that promise. I want to make a point that it's rare not only to have a company like PTC that's growing in the mid-teens, profitable in and around 40%, very rare, but also very, very rare to have a market leader in all the verticals where we spend time and energy. So it's every single time there is an evaluation of the PLM market, this guy is the leader, is the winner. And I have to say that it's always been the case for things like our IoT platform, our augmented reality technology. ServiceMax is very well regarded in the industry as well. I would say industry analysts are just waking up to the importance of software in products today. It seems a little odd if you've been at it for a long time, but there are no formal industry analyst commentary on the application lifecycle management market, and so that's why that part is blank. But I'm confident with our strategy with Codebeamer that will change and we'll be upper right. But I did want to make a point that something's happening in CAD, which is a little odd. But in the last few years, there's been 3 different analysis of things going on in the CAD market, one by a lesser-known company called ISG, but the last 2 by ABI Research, and we've been upper right in both of those as well. I actually think it's not because CAD is new, but it's because of the digital story. Companies that want to get value out of digital have to rethink a little bit of what's happening in engineering. And actually, there was a question specifically about that, about what is the burden on engineering to try to make sure you can take advantage of the digital thread throughout the entire life cycle of the product. And I think this is why industry analysts are now going back to look at what's happening in CAD. And in fact, the very first of these 3 from ISG, a lesser-known analyst firm, was actually about who is best positioned to bring a customer fully to digital. That which PTC was upper right. This is a commentary on Creo and Windchill together. So anyway, market leader in all the verticals and all the products we serve across that digital thread. Very, very excited about that. Okay, so we're going to get into some of the core topics here. The first one we want to talk about is model-based. This was an important element of what we heard from Vestas. The model-based enterprise shouldn't be a new term to you, but there is a lot that's been happening in the core of what's happening between Creo and Windchill to enable it better. I want to make a point that, again, to the question that was asked earlier today, there has to be a difference in the way that content is authored in engineering in order to enable the model-based enterprise, in order to drive the digital thread throughout the entire value chain using just the core model, okay? These are actually former definitions. I decided not to put the reference because it's an American standard. I think there might be an ISO equivalent definition of model-based enterprise, but these are actually ASME definition standards of those two terms, so that's why I use them. The point is that at PTC, we're ready to help you become more model-based, maybe more so than you realize because you've just got a lot going on. We've been working at this hard. Just starting with where we are with Creo, and then we'll hear from where we are with Windchill, specifically to the point on the burden in engineering. This is actually a very, very common question we get. And I will tell you that up until Creo 10, which is not even a year old, we would say that it was, I would say, on par the amount of energy it took to author a design in Creo without creating a 2D drawing such that it could be used downstream. I don't have time to get into it today, but if you come to my breakout session, I will tell you exactly why I'm absolutely convinced you can be faster in model-based in Creo today than you can be authoring a 2D drawing. I'm absolutely convinced of it. You can be faster. I will explain why, but we're ready to finally enable a lot more automation around the building of models to support the digital thread without having to create that 2D artifact. We're ready to do it in Creo, and I'll explain that in more detail with our discussion on model-based topics at the breakout session at 11 o'clock. Mr. Lobo, how about at the enterprise level?
All right. Yeah, you had a good definition up there. So let's take an actual situation where you're doing all of that work in engineering that Brian talked about, and then engineer says they're going to check this in a Windchill so that the enterprise can have access to it. Some of the key things you can do right inside of Creo, for folks that use Creo, you can say, hey, this is a designated parameter, so tolerance, GD&T, annotations, but you can also do something else. You can flag this as being a control characteristic so that you can make use of it downstream in manufacturing, in quality, in something else. So the first thing you do is you start off in Creo, do all of this work, and then you check it into Windchill. And then inside of Windchill, you're actually going to be able to now use that in, for example, a process plan or a quality inspection process. So this is the model-based enterprise coming to life. And we see, as you looked at the Vestas demonstration there, and we go to the website, you'll start to see how all of that work that was done up front is being used downstream. What I wanted to show you is an actual example of this taking place. So here's a spindle that I have defined in Creo. You can see that I have some key dimensions that I have defined there. And I'm going to go inside of Creo and say, this is important for me to develop an inspection plan around. So I'm going to go in and say, I need to tag these as control characteristics so that when I push this into Windchill, I now have the ability to make use of that in defining their process plan. So first thing, I check that into Windchill. Now Windchill knows that these are key characteristics that it has to keep tracking. So this is looking at the Windchill definition. You can start to see this is one of the parts in here. Now I'm opening it up in a view that allows me to actually create standard control characteristics that I can use inside of my process plan. You can see the spindle there. I can go in and say, this is important for me. And I'm showing you this is not the ideal process, but I want to show you step by step how you could do it. So I'm going in and saying, I need that dimension of 246. I need those tolerances because I'm going to make use of them in defining a actual inspection plan. So very simply in here, I can go in and now see both of those GD&T information has been captured semantically. So if you make a change in Creo, this is really important, and you check that in, all of these get updated, right? So you have that full traceability all the way to engineering. This is a manufacturing engineer going in and saying, I want to create an inspection plan. Again, a lot of this can be automated, but I want to show you how that's done. I'm going to go in, create an inspection plan, and then bring in those control characteristics that I just defined. Right? So this is design engineering, passing it on to the manufacturing engineering folks in here. And you can start to see as it shows up here, this is the inspection plan for that spindle. And it's coming up in here. So I'm inserting my standard operations in here. And you could do this for each one of the components, or you could do it at the assembly level as well, if you're doing assembly process plan. So this is just showing you, again, semantically, it's all there. And I think this is an important part, which is the change management. So all the work that was done by the designer up front, if there's any changes, I can go now and capture that. Last but not least, I can develop a standard work instruction. You heard Simon talk about the digital work instructions. This is one of them. Again, if changes are being made in engineering, they get passed on to manufacturing. So really, really quick view of showing the model-based enterprise at work, starting off with model-based design. So wanted to show and share with you how that's possible with Creo and Windchill together. Okay, next important topic, right? So we chose 4 of them. This is the second one, which is design for sustainability. And when you saw about Vestas being the most sustainable company on the planet, it's on everybody's mind here. Just by show of hands, how many people talk about ESG, sustainability in the companies and defining their products today? Okay. I expected much more hands to go up, but it's a lot about a few different things. So what I wanted to show you is using that same digital thread, infinity loop, with thinking about sustainability in all of the areas of the product life cycle. On the digital side, so thinking about sustainability requirements and being able to capture that. Think about doing that on the CAD side, defining your materials. And then on the PLM side, there's a lot of information about, and I'm going to show you a use case, just as you're capturing cost and weight, what about capturing the product carbon footprint as a roll-up? It's something that you need to do. And then as you get into the digital physical side, you can see some of the other areas where you want to capture a lot of information about sustainability when things are being produced in the factory or when they're living out in the real world. So this is to just give you a view of how we see sustainability driving the entire life cycle. But Brian and I will focus on the design portion with CAD and PLM. Now, we know we're a CAD and PLM company, but there's a lot of partners out there that have developed niche technology that ties in very well with Creo and Windchill, but also the rest of our product line. So let me show you a good example. When it comes to material selection, material extraction, suppliers, we have a number of partners in here. You can see that for component selection, material selection. So I'm going to give you an example of that. And then as you move on into the manufacturing side and operating, you can see some of the other partners. The reason that we have these here is that if you're looking for sustainability solutions alongside with PTC technology, you might want to consider some of these partner technologies because they're well integrated, and in many cases they work with Brian's team and my team in building out these capabilities. So it's really critical that you understand there's an ecosystem out there of partners that develop that. Okay. So let me show you one of the use cases that I think is really important. And when Simon was showing you a picture of the turbine right on top, there was something that you see that looks like the assembly that's on the right side there. It's the cooling top. So that's the one where the air flows through and allows you to maintain the cooling temperature. It's defined in different configurations, and in hot regions you want to have a lot of more cooling capabilities. So as the Vestas engineers are going to start defining, they also need to be able to determine what's the carbon footprint for their entire assembly. And so what we have here is a demonstration. This is something we're working on. It allows you to take a look at all the materials that go into creating that product understanding what is the carbon footprint of each of those components. So this is where we partner with folks like Granta and others and allow you to capture that information, make that available in Windchill, and just like you would do a cost roll-up or a weight roll-up, now you can also do a product carbon footprint roll-up. So you can see for that configuration of the turbine, what is the actual carbon footprint. And that's how you're able to calculate, and actually when they deploy the wind turbine, they can actually tell the company this is what the carbon footprint is going to be. So let me show you what that looks like. So I'm inside of Windchill here. You can see the visualization of that cooler top. With the integrations that we have with Granta as an example here, we can capture material characteristics, and that includes the material, and Brian's going to talk about that, but more importantly, it says for these components that might be either designed internally or they might be sourced from someone else, what is the carbon footprint? So you can see here, actually not too well, it says, carbon footprint, reach, material names, material information, and this is all coming, in many cases, from Creo, but in other cases, it's coming from the material database that it's connected to. What we've shown here is a simple mashup. So I can go in now and look at the top cooler top assembly. And based on all the information that is being captured from those sources, I can now go and actually do a cost roll-up. So if I choose a different configuration of the components that went into that cooler top, like you would do in Windchill, by having a modular structure that Simon was talking about, I can now start to get and see for that specific configuration what my carbon footprint roll-up is going to be. So this is one of the characteristics that Windchill will capture live as you're creating new configurations of your different products. So just a cool way to do that. But now let me just hand it over to you, Brian, where you can talk about how the heck did that material information get into Creo and then into Windchill?
Yeah, so today, if you probably know, if you're familiar with Creo, that today, and this continues forward for at least the short period of time, Creo absorbs material information into the Creo object. That's still a fact today. What we have to work on together is a way to make sure the material definition is actually owned outside of the Creo object so that that material definition can evolve over time and Creo can stay linked to it. That's not yet in the product. But what you might not be aware of is, given the openness of the architecture between Creo and Windchill that our partners enjoy, we already have an integration with the ANSYS Granta material database. You probably are aware we do ship ANSYS Granta materials with Creo, a basic subset, but they've built an integration, which you're seeing here. It's in production. You can talk about it with the ANSYS team that's here at the event. And what it allows you to do is reach out into the ANSYS Granta database online directly from inside Creo and actually do searches for materials that might have different characteristics. You can search by, say, carbon footprint. You can search by CO2. You can search by, I guess that's the same thing. Yeah. You can search by density. You can search by Young's modulus. You can search by strength and so forth. And then what will end up happening is we're tied into Creo, so what will end up happening is that material information gets absorbed into the Creo object and then locked in a locked parameter. Okay, it's not like you can't unlock it, but the point is that it's there, it's intended to be locked, it's intended to be fixed in the object, but it is, at this point, still absorbed into the Creo object. We do have a project on our backlog to try to make sure that material definition sits outside of the Creo object and it's linked in. And that is, I think, an important aspect of getting to a more sustainable view of the product going forward. But right now, this works today. We ship Creo with Granta materials, and you can extend that with an integration written by the Granta team so you can get access to their materials online directly through the Creo interface. It's an open API access to Creo like anything else. We're allowing for that. So I think you could take a look at that and learn more about that when you're here today. Okay, we're going to switch topics and talk about SaaS. I want to make a point that, first of all, our strategy from a SaaS point of view is to deliver to you all of the value of our core products just in a much more easily consumable and integrated way, right? There's a lot of work trying to get Creo, Windchill, and all the other products at PTC to work together seamlessly. And part of the value of delivering them to you from PTC as a SaaS product with value-added services from partners like PDS is so that you don't have to worry about keeping this stuff up to date. It also unlocks some other types of use cases like much better collaboration scenarios and so forth. And again, you'll see that this week if you, I think it's not today, but tomorrow there's another deep dive session on Creo Plus, for instance, and we'll show you some really, really cool collaboration scenarios with our SaaS-based version of Creo that I'll talk about briefly. But so what we're trying to do here is make the full power and capability of the Creo and Windchill offerings available to all of you, but in a much more easily consumable way to lower the overall cost of ownership. And thankfully, we're doing this in a I would say uniform way. I think we showed a version of this slide last year. I don't think I know because we had to edit the slide this morning because the Atlas platform is a unified platform on which all PTC SaaS products will be deployed. So if it's got the Plus moniker, it's on the Atlas platform. And what's different about this chart today versus a year ago is Creo Plus is now in the market. So Creo Plus was in the future section, and now Creo Plus is live and available. So you can basically consume Creo as a SaaS product today. We'll talk a little bit more about that again in the next couple of days if you want to know more. I have a little bit on it here, but everything is being deployed on Atlas. So things that like identity access management are common. You know, the goal is that you log in one time and now you're in, and you're not logging in multiple times to log in for the Windchill credentials, your whatever. It's all the same, right? Because it's all managed on the Atlas platform. So what about Creo Plus? As I said, a year ago we weren't in the market. There's a couple important points that I want to make about this just for this audience's purposes. I'm not going to show you a demo. First and foremost, you should understand Creo Plus is Creo. It's not some reduced capacity version. It's 100% of what you enjoy today of Creo, but it is up to date and it is always the latest version. It is all of the power of Creo, but it's deployed a lot more easily. And people say to me, Brian, did you re-architect Creo to get it on the cloud? And I will say, yes, but there's a catch. And the catch is we care too much about all of your data to re-architect Creo to the point where we might put that at risk. What that means is 100% of any of the data ever authored in any version of Pro Engineer or Creo, 100% of it is upwards compatible into Creo Plus. 100% of it. So we did re-architect Creo to create Creo Plus, but the reality is all of Creo is being developed with that new architecture. And the best evidence I can give you of that is if you want to uninstall the version of Creo you have on your desktop today and reinstall a new version, including download time, that's a, 30-minute to 45-minute to 1 hour expedition. But from the time you log into Atlas to the time you are running Creo Plus, about 5 minutes. 5 minutes. You don't have anything on your machine. You log into Atlas, say, I want to run Creo Plus, as long as your administrator is giving you access to Creo Plus. It's about 5 minutes, maybe 10. Okay, so we've significantly improved the way the technology is deployed to your desktop. There's a lot of other benefits. The coolest one for the users is, frankly, the fact that you can do real-time multi-user collaboration. The coolest one for the administrators is the fact that it's just as simple as having the email of the user that you want to enable on the product. They just get an email, they click, they're enabled, they log in. They don't have to worry about install scripts or any of that. We handle all of that. The administrators love that. And I think one other new thing that administrators love is we've taken the pressure off with the way Creo Plus and Windchill Plus are intended to work together. We ultimately want you to be on Creo Plus and Windchill Plus, but a lot of customers love what they've done with Windchill over the years with customizations, and we're being very careful about how we bring customizations of Windchill into the cloud. And so you said, you know what? You have the full freedom to choose now today. You can choose to go to Creo Plus, and we will support you with on-premises Windchill. That's basically, we're going to have a compatibility matrix, just like we do with Creo and Windchill today, that says if you're on Creo Plus, there's a certain set of on-premises versions of Windchill that we will also support. It's basically, if you're on a supported version with on-premises Creo, Creo Plus will work with it. That's basically what the strategy is going to be. We're going to publish that formally, so you don't have to feel a pressure to have a timeline to get to Windchill Plus. If you want to take your time getting to Windchill Plus, you can do it. We want you to have full freedom to do that. How about Windchill Plus?
Yeah. So good segue there.
By the way, this was my water. You didn't drink this water.
No,
Okay.
I had. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, we're brothers, but okay. Okay. It's my water.
So we actually had this exact same slide last year during this event. We actually switched things around. I noticed that even maybe not. You got to fix some of that too. We want to focus on this first piece, which is tailoring an upgrade experience, because Brian made an important point, which is a lot of the value that customers are getting with Windchill today is because of the business processes that they've tailored inside of Windchill, and some of that is done today through customization, right? And so when we talk about Windchill Plus, the first thing that comes to people's mind is, this is SaaS, so I got to give up all customizations and I got to go completely out of the box. That is not true. What we want is to bring customizations and tailoring into Windchill Plus that actually meet security guardrails, scalability guardrails, makes this easier for us to deploy that at scale. And so we've been focusing on how can we make it easy for you to bring the customizations in so that you can tailor the system and then get those upgrades more regularly, right? So we focused a lot on that system administrator, partner experience of helping you get to Windchill Plus, as opposed to talking about all the other things we talked about last time, which is all of these cool capabilities that Atlas gives you. No, let's talk about how to get you the same value you have on premise in Windchill Plus. So that's the first thing. To recap one more thing that maybe was mentioned last year, I'll say it again. We have no plans to stop the development of Windchill Plus, which you have on premise. Why? Because Windchill Plus and Windchill share the same code base, absolutely the same. So all the capabilities that you enjoy with Windchill Plus, running it today with Creo Plus, you're going to have the same things. It's the plus aspects of it. So what are some of those plus aspects? One is the single sign-on experience that we talked about, which is an Atlas service. There are other services that we will deliver on Atlas that are very specific to SaaS that you will get the benefit from as you look at getting to Windchill Plus. But in terms of the capabilities that you have today, they're exactly the same between the two areas. And I think the compatibility is a big question. So as Brian said, we make sure that if you go to Creo Plus, you can always have Windchill Plus. But if you stay with Windchill and you have Creo Plus, that will be a supported combination. And we will ensure that compatibility will always continue. So that's about Windchill Plus. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time. If there are questions that people have, you can find me outside and talk a little bit more about that. We wanted to switch to the last topic, which is probably the most interesting topic for a lot of you, which is AI in product development. And AI could be in artificial intelligence. It could be in applied analytics. It could be Chat GPT, or like all of the buzzwords and everything that you hear about. But what we wanted to share with you, both Brian and I, is they're not just buzzwords for us at PTC. We actually take this quite seriously, and there are 3 guiding principles for us. And I want you to understand a little bit around that, because it'll help you understand then our roadmap around it. The first thing is about value. Everybody has, just by show of hands, how many companies here have some AI project going on in their companies using Chat GPT, Copilot, Teams? Yeah? Okay. We do the same. Okay, we have Copilot in place at PTC and do it. But an important thing as we look at all of these is, what is the value that we're delivering using that technology that makes sense for that product life cycle? So we're focused on solving true customer problems, as opposed to taking the technology and saying, how can we use it? Look at the customer view first, and that's what's driving. So is it actually solving customer problems as we look at AI? The second thing is, it has to be scalable. You can't just do it in one group. It has to be scalable across the enterprise. So you've got to think of Are we using a common platform to do it? Is it the Microsoft platform? Is it someone else? We can be with proprietary technology. So we got to think big, and we think about scaling across the enterprise as we think of delivering a solution. And third, a really, really key important part is being responsible. Why? Because we're using your data in some cases and make that available. A lot of the AI engines run on the cloud. So when you bring all of that data, is it going to be shared with somebody else? And these are all the questions that people in your companies will be asking you as you do these projects. How do you ensure the data is secure? Is it suddenly going to proliferate across the ecosystem? So we think of all of these guiding principles as we think of what we're going to go off and do. Okay, so I'm going to actually have this slide build out and kind of talk through these. As we look at this infinity loop here, we also think around how AI is powering the digital thread vision for PTC. And, it might be as simple as validating requirements. So you can have the analytics engine go off and say, do these requirements actually make sense? We're going to show you what we're doing on the engineering side with CAD and PLM. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because we'll show you actual use cases. But as you get into, the manufacturing, so prediction of quality and maintenance on the shop floor, doing inspection, automating, because a lot of the times you think about AI, it's around automation, but providing you insights from what you have to do after that. So you can start to see some of the use cases even on the service side. These are all things that we're either working on today or we actually have solutions for. And that's what Brian and I will quickly share with you. Just to give you a taste of, these are all areas that we are looking into, and some of these are further along research-wise, some of these are already in the product. So expect to see a lot more from PTC in this space. But remember those three guiding principles of how we look at delivering value to you as well. So Brian, I think or is it me up? I think it's you.
We'll talk about a couple CAD topics. So first one is in generative, and we've had generative capabilities in Creo for a while now, and the underlying engine that we acquired when we bought Frustum several years ago does have AI learning capabilities. Those capabilities are not turned on. I just want to be clear, but they're in the engine, and some of the search algorithms for finding solutions are the so-called genetic algorithms in our generative solutions today. It's part of the reason why every time we benchmark our generative solutions in Creo against the competition, we're always faster. And people don't understand why solving the same problem we're faster than what you see from other CAD vendors. It's partly because the underlying algorithms actually have these genetic capabilities. Did we just get the 5-minute? Hi. Did you get 5 minutes? Okay, all right. I'll hurry up. But I did want to show you the first place you are likely to see beyond generative capabilities in Creo some AI is in a Copilot for engineering. I'm watching this to try to make sure it runs. I think I might have to click to make it go. Okay, good. So you can imagine there is, if those of you that have been with us a long time, there are a million different ways to do the same type of design task in Creo. It's a blessing and a curse of Creo. There's lots of different options, and oftentimes new users get confused about what is the best way to achieve a specific goal. Large language models are great at interpreting basic types of inputs from a person in natural language and then feeding back to you with a knowledge about all of the capabilities of Creo, what the best way might be to accomplish that design task. And so I don't know if it'll be exactly this type of implementation, but the first place you'll see AI beyond generative in Creo is to help users be more productive. Will we call it Copilot? I don't know. But you will see this in the not too distant future in Creo. We want to make users more productive. Now, will we do more than this in Creo? Yes. But the thing that's gotten everybody excited is this concept of a large language model. I would submit to you that the underlying steps to create a CAD model and the Creo application is just another type of language. It's a language of engineering. And so could AI be used to do some really, really interesting automating things there? I think it could, but I'm not going to say much more than that. I'll leave it to you to that. But just think about the fact that Creo is nothing but a recipe. It's a language recipe of how to apply geometric changes to create an output. that is used for engineering purposes and what it might mean to unleash learning on a database like that. Could be very, very interesting. But what about in Windchill?
Yeah, similar grounds as Creo. If you think about it, there's a million ways of doing the same thing, and you might have as a company a best practice that as new engineers are coming in, you can actually use that for training purpose. Here it says, here's a use case that says, can you find parts that are similar to that? So you're asking the system to go out, and maybe you've done a little bit of that thinking up front. Are there similar parts? You can see those in here, and then you start to ask questions based on what's selected. Is where is this actually manufactured? So now you're sequentially going through and asking the system to guide you. And think of it for new engineers coming in. This is the way that they're used to working. Just think about going and buying something on Amazon examples. This is another way in which you're using AI to guide you to eventually choosing and make the right decisions. One of the most common use cases, and the first one you'll probably see with Windchill, is this area of part reuse and classification. And think of it as three main scenarios. One is data cleansing, as in you have tons and tons of data, especially if you're merging companies and so on and so forth. Everybody's designing the same part. One of the first steps to do is go and actually find similar parts in the system and actually classify them as such, so that now you know that things are looking very similar. So that's for step number one. Step number two is actually during the design process, like Brian was showing, if you're in there, can you go and say, I'm looking for a part that looks like this, show me the ones as opposed to creating a new one. And then for some cases, one of the most difficult parts and why people don't use classification is it's a heck of a job to classify a part when you created it. How about the system telling you, based on what I know, this is the classification parameters you need to put in. So when you check it in, the engine is going to go and classify things for you, as opposed to manually a designer doing it. So let me show a quick example. Oops, I guess I had to. No. What did you do to get it to go? Just.
I have no magic for you.
No magic for me. No. All right. Let me see. No, that's not it. That's not
They're
it.
just going to have to trust you that it's awesome.
Yeah, it is. Can imagine all of that magic happen. But all right. And I think we're kind of out of time too.
Yeah, we're going to get kicked off the stage anyway, right?
So,
yeah.
Just quickly, both from Brian and I's perspective, and overall for PTC, first of all, thank you for your business, your partnership with us. PDS Vision and PTC are here to help you, and not just for the 2 days, but for the rest of it. And anything else you want to close with?
No, thanks everybody for your time. Really appreciate it. Don't want to take too much time out of the coffee break, but I think we did okay for time. We're not getting beat up too bad. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to many conversations for the rest of the day and tomorrow and going forward. Appreciate it.
Thank you.